Okay, so this is Management Monday. I am dropping the notes for us to just jot down our thoughts and stuff. So far, I just include stuff that was raised last week that we didn't get to. So there might be stuff that people want to add. So does anybody have a priority or anything that they want to add before we get started?
I just want to talk transition since it is transition week.
Maybe.
We do that on first, I think. Transition.
And yeah, that's part of transition too.
You were thinking about the priorities for Michael?
Also docket number fields. Yeah.
So that's number 3 for Kate.
Sorry, what?
Hi, Kate. It's just we had a question about docket number fields that we wanted to ask you a little bit.
I have something more specific, I think. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah, I have other questions. That's fine. We will. I think none of them are super. Okay, let's go ahead.
Maeve,
Okay.
where did you put the link to the?
It's
In the Zoom chat.
It should be in the chat. How did you do that, David?
I just sat down.
Oh.
I usually stand up. I'm over here. All I did was I just sat down.
I thought you managed to make yourself in the TV screen.
Yeah.
It's an interesting visual illusion that I actually did for my undergraduate thesis. We should talk about it sometime.
I don't have it in my Zoom chat.
No, he's just looking tiny. I think.
Oh, I only did it privately to David. Sorry, that was my bad. Okay. Sorry,
Well,
everyone.
I'm like, I have it.
Dodo brain.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so there's the doc. The first thing obviously is transition. Then we've just got some other questions that can be dealt with. Maybe we can find a time to deal with them. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add at the outset? Otherwise, we can just add as we go, as things come to mind.
Yeah, I think there will probably be subpoints within transition that we don't need to name, but.
Sure. Michelle, are you going to type today, or do you want me to type?
You type. I'm just adding some thoughts before I forget them. That's all.
Okay.
So
transition. So this week is primarily the transition for the students. Jody's going back to school on the 24th. So this is kind of like our last week with Jody. So we need to try and figure out how best to do this. The first thing in that vein was I dropped some forms in the admin channel regarding feedback and time spent on the project. I know Michelle had a look at them. I was wondering if anybody else did. And then what we would do is we would say if you are wrapping up on the project this week, could you please complete these forms? And then I would just at the end of this week, or maybe at the end of next week, take that feedback and then combine it into just a nice document. It's 3 questions.
Did we find somebody to do a form that would help gather that feedback?
I just did it. I did it based on the questions that you and Michelle had.
I would suggest changing least enjoyed to something more constructive, because I don't believe people. So something like most challenging or most obstructive.
To most
Probably
challenging. I like most challenging.
I would say most obstructive, because most challenging is like, what did you improve on the most?
Yeah.
So
Okay, so most obstructive. Okay. Other than that, I mean, it's 3 questions. I didn't want to, it could have been a lot longer, but I think if we have fewer questions, we might be more inclined to get better answers on the 3 questions that we have.
I concur. The fewer, the better.
Yeah. So, and it's anonymous. There's no.
And maybe, you know what, Maeve? I agree with that. Fewer questions, the better. And then maybe just give a free form text, like a
I did a free form
additional comments. Perfect.
Yeah.
Then that's perfect. Yeah.
So if there's anything that they feel that wasn't captured in those 3, then they can add that at the end. I wonder how much. I always add something at the end. That's just my personality, though. So we'll see.
I might call it something like an offboarding survey or something, because people don't, or I kind of ignore feedback surveys.
Okay.
So, because like, you know, it's a thing I'm used to, and I'm like, they don't really, you know, or whatever it is, right? So something that sounds more like this is a thing that students should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just don't call it a separation survey.
Yeah. I know, I hate that term.
Is that a thing that people call things?
Thing in the States, like when you separate from a company or something. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So maybe, do you have it open in front of you, Michelle?
Yeah.
Could you just change that title right now, so that, and maybe can you just change that question, just so that's one less thing for me to do after this meeting?
Sure, but you didn't give a link for editing it. You just gave a link for.
Oh,
taking
you
it.
should have. Okay, never mind. You should have from that.
I can find it in my drive though.
Yeah, it's under volunteer information.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So then what I'll do is I will send this out on the assembly line channel today, and then I'll put a reminder in the Slack to, and I'll put a reminder to send up tomorrow. And give people until they actually sign off to do it. I think because they're Suffolk students, I've seen that a lot of them actually, we still have them we still have means to contact them. Speaking of contact, I'm a little bit worried about, I'm actually just gonna pause this recording. Okay, so in terms of contacting students, we've got students' emails from when they onboarded. I think we've agreed that that's enough. Going forward, if we need to reach out, plus David and Quentin know who they are. So if we have questions, and then the kind of next 2-3 weeks after they've transitioned off, then we can always ask them via email. Okay, so I will drop those 2 forms in the channel, and then remind people to stand up tomorrow. Okay. What was next in terms of transitioning?
So one question is, who goes, like what people should go through the issues and determine like which tasks are most realistic for like the final goals, and determine, I think MVP we might be able to determine after students are gone. But just to start with, which goals are appropriate for finishing out their time here for now. MVP, I don't think I'm qualified to decide what that is, but I might be able to do some kind of short-term goals for the end of their stay.
Because obviously this is very time sensitive.
Yeah, because it means the next 4 days, really, right?
And in some cases, yeah, I think in at least 2 cases, Wednesday.
So those people should be first. Who are those people?
They just told me. 1 second. So I think out of Blake and Aubrey's team, Blake, Matt, and Aubrey, one of them is jumping off early. So, but they're kind of done. They're ready to hand over. They're just testing at the moment. Theirs has already been installed on the test server. So I'm not too sure if that was the main one that they're jumping off in the middle.
We also have to make sure that people have like actually made issues for handing things off.
Okay.
I mean, but you know,
issues is we want someone to be able to pick up where stuff left off. So we want to transfer repos and hand issues on.
Yeah. I tend to think there probably isn't very much that most of the people can do in the next few days, other than document. And maybe we can reframe it as issues plus kind of create a memo that summarizes what the current state is. So it's a more narrative memo. That's how I would think I would be able to do in a few days.
I like
so
that.
maybe we should switch people's focus from more coding to
documentation.
Should we put that into the channel and and or have a, I mean, we've had a group meeting about what's important to capture in issues, but I don't think we've discussed a memo.
Yeah, I just think we should ask everyone who will be leaving this week to write a paragraph or two that points to their repo and says what the state of it is, and to document as many issues as they can in GitHub.
Yeah, like basically, what would you tell the
Are
next
you writing
student
this,
who's coming
Michelle, or
along
am I
to
supposed to be
finish?
writing this?
I can see it being written.
I'm also writing it though.
Yeah, and Quentin,
Oh.
Okay, you go ahead and write it then.
Okay.
I would even expand on what Quentin just said, and I would say, you know, if someone was going to hand you, knowing what state this is in currently, if you like, imagine yourself as a person on the other side that's going to be, you know, receiving it, what would you want to know?
Yeah.
And have it put it that way, because it's so easy for us to, you know, when you have the context, it's
right.
Yeah.
It's a transfer memo.
What might be helpful is to also give them, like, you know, you said like a paragraph or two, but maybe it would be helpful, or it would be possibly more helpful, possibly, if you said something like, you know, can you just take, like, instead of working on your form or doing whatever you were going to do this week for an hour, take that hour, or if we want 2 hours, or if we want an hour and a half, or whatever we want, and just tell them to work on it for that chunk of time. That might, maybe that helps too. I don't know.
I do like that. Yeah, then it's like it's a assignment where we say, yeah, that's clear what the priority is then.
I wonder how long
And there
it'll
are going to
take.
be some
Hours?
people who keep working on these things, but I mean, an hour might not quite be enough, but it might also be a realistic amount. I'm not sure.
And then I think it also, sorry, I think it also helps them understand, like, oh, if we say 2 hours, then it's like, okay, that's, there's some, like, this is important. This is something that I need to really take some time on and think about. And yeah.
So 2
I
hours.
just don't want
expect
people thinking that it has
some-
to be like a big technical report.
Right. Because we're really, I mean, the truth is it probably, that report wouldn't ever capture everything we needed to capture. So that's not a good exercise, but at least enough to have a hint for what's the next step for this is, I think, what we can hope for at best.
Another thing that I was
We need to
thinking
know
of,
where the repo is and what the state of the project is.
another
Is it
thing that
really
I was
close to
thinking
being done? Is it not? What are the steps?
And maybe, since, you know, this is something that it's not new, but it's kind of a new exercise for us. Maybe we ask people to do that in the next day or so, however soon we can, and then we review a couple of them, and then we can go back to them and ask them more questions. And that I think this exercise will help us figure out sort of a, you know, maybe we can come up with like a handoff checklist or something in the future, so that we know exactly what more pointed questions to ask.
So really
I think in the future,
perfect,
yeah. My suspicion is in the future we'll actually have running sheets for all of the forms, and they will serve this purpose.
Oh, cool. Okay.
The other
Because
thing
I think that's going to be one of the things that happens to these students who are subjected to Quentin and I's instruction, is they will need to do running sheets. So.
The other thing that I was thinking is that as I was uploading demo videos, if we could just get the students, I was wondering if we could put demo videos in a playlist like we've done with Teaching Tuesday, to kind of categorize. They don't really fit into like the tutorials screen shows playlist. And then also just get them to link to their videos, because I think a lot of information is actually housed in those videos. Get them to just link those videos in that transfer memo.
I think that's a good idea.
That's
Do you
true.
need someone to make the
Yeah,
playlist, or is that something?
No, I can do it. It's not that.
You can do it. Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea.
So block of 2 hours to create a transfer memo.
And I like 2 hours. 2 hours sounds too much.
1.5.
An hour and a half.
90 minutes.
Block of 90 minutes to create a transfer memo, which includes where the repo is, or link to repo. Where the project, like what state it's in.
Would that be something that we would put a label on in GitHub? If we had labels, they could just add it. Or are the labels sort of Suffolk Lit Lab wide, or are they per interview?
They're per interview, and I think you could just make the title memo and then the date or whatever, though the date will be on the issue anyway. So because I don't think a label for just one issue is super useful. It's more useful for.
Oh, I didn't mean the issue. I meant the interview, like the status of the interview.
I like what
I
you're
know,
saying,
but-
but
Never mind. Never mind. It's okay.
I think you're saying, can we like tag the repositories on GitHub, right? That's what you're asking. So we can see easily at a glance which ones are
state
done.
are they? Do they need to be but maybe that's also something in the Trello and not in the repository, but you know, if
also
every
put it in the
interview
README.
has a Trello card. Sorry?
Would it be useful for the README?
The what?
README.
The
I stepped
README.
away for a minute. What did I miss just quickly?
Would
It
it
sounded
use-
like we were trying to figure out where to put status of things.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And I don't think there's a way to tag the repository, but the README could be a place. Trello seems like definitely a place where this information.
Yeah, I think that Trello makes sense. Is there
that's its purpose.
Is there a way from GitHub to tag the Trello card? Because the card moves, right?
Yeah.
But it keeps the same URL. So if
Yep.
there was some connection between the
Okay.
repository.
In theory, just the location of the card and the Trello board should tell us the status.
Yeah, exactly. Where the card is in the Trello board and the GitHub.
That is the
theory.
But
that is the goal of the Trello board.
But part of the memo itself could be linking, as Caroline said, having a link to the Trello card. So that's also housed in the kind of memo issue.
And then where does the memo go? Is that in the README or where does that go?
I guess I like that idea. If that's something that's easy for people to do.
I think the other thing, I know this might
show
go
people
over
how to
90 minutes, but I think one of the things that would be really valuable is for everybody to look at their interview and make sure in the author, in the README file, their names are in there and they can get rid of, I don't care so much about whether those names that are there are relevant or not, but I do think it would be really nice to have people's names in the README file who worked on that interview.
Or in the interview metadata as well?
Yeah, I'm not bothered where. I just think that helps us big picture, long term. And
sorry, Quentin.
Oh, that's okay.
So the only drawback of putting the narrative in the
I was just waiting for you to pause. Sorry, David.
The only drawback I see of putting the closing memo in the README is then it precludes people from mentioning SME contacts and such.
Because it would be a public document.
Because it would be a public.
We don't want to. We don't want to acknowledge SMEs in the.
We don't want to have conversation where it's like, you still need to talk to so and so because they haven't gotten back to my call, or
and
I hear what you're saying. But does that mean we shouldn't put that on Trello also? Because Trello is public the way it's set up right now. I mean, we could change that permission. It doesn't have to stay.
Yeah, public. I think the Trello, even though it's public, it's much harder to. You're not going to browse around. There's not like you're not going to discover our Slack is public, but the GitHub, is linked to from almost all the websites we have.
So you were saying, I was just saying everybody who's touched it. Are you saying just by that it would look like?
No, I'm having a different conversation. I'm going back to Quentin's comment about the transfer memo. And the location of the transfer memo.
Sorry.
Because the content of the transfer memo may reference individuals, and I want people to feel free to be able to talk about those individuals. I mean, the other thing we could do is we could just make it a Google form that says, where's your repo? What is its status? Who are the SMEs?
Yeah, that's kind of related to the checklist.
I think something more flexible would be better so that they can really, so they can say, well, I need to check with this person about this. And
I'm fine with that too. I also think that you can have that flexibility if you do a form with just a narrative. Okay. I think it should just be a narrative. It's just that some prompting is also probably good because there are a couple things we want to make sure we know. Where is the repo? Being the chief one. But that can easily be a prompt to a document as well. I don't care so much about the medium.
Ask them to upload it, I suppose, and then still have the form. I do like the form to help people have the link and then the names of the people. That's really useful.
It's also easy for
That'll
us
also
because it
put
compiles
everything
into
a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
David and I are on the same.
And then
yeah.
even the status could be, the status could go into that too. So we can see.
So let's
that's
figure out what other
Caroline's
things
point.
we
Okay, so
need to know. We
we-
need to know where the repo is.
But no, if you're thinking about the form, okay, we need name of interview. Like I'm just thinking of like what the spreadsheet.
I think we say name of form.
Sorry,
think
name
that-
of form. Name
yeah,
of form. Name
Yeah.
of team. Link to repo. What state it's in.
Yeah, is that team members? Because we don't. It's not like we had
Team
Team
members.
Shark.
Team members, yeah. The teams don't have names.
Yeah.
Although
Sorry,
we
yeah.
Should have next time. Now I'm
Yeah.
thinking we should have encouraged people to name their teams.
Come up with a team name. Okay.
They should just name themselves after the
Oh, you were muted, Michelle.
form name. Boy,
This
it's
semester we
such a
can
hard
do
time
that.
remembering who's doing what.
yeah.
This semester we can have two names.
But I was always under so much pressure that I come with like the worst team names, like Dolphin Team. Okay, so name of form, name of team members, link to repo, what state it's in, link to Trello card, link to demo video.
For the state, can we have a selection of like
Yep.
so that so that when you want to sort them there, you can say everything's that it's pre-selected, so people don't
close to being
take
done.
different names.
Close to being
I'd say ready for court, ready for testing, tested, or ready for production,
ready for
and testing is like unit testing or testing server. So maybe ready for testing server.
This
and ready
might be
for,
the same names as your lists would be on Trello.
yeah, that's what I'm also thinking.
Good
Okay,
point.
that sounds good.
So
So do we have the?
That's actually a good way to sync it up. So, okay, put it on the
Yeah.
right Trello list.
Yeah.
Say what Trello list it's on.
So Jody and I will have a look at the Trello list, the checklist that we have for the Trello, and try and just distill some names, distill some drop downs. And because testing and development can run in parallel, I would say we have two separate drop downs, one for testing and one for development.
I think the other thing, not to hammer it, but when you were showing us before about the Trellos, so you have sort of, it's here and it's there and then it's in limbo in between.
Buffer,
right?
yeah.
So you were doing that. I think that's really helpful. And so if we could have those names for those and use those as the drop downs for the status of the repository.
Yeah, that's what Maeve and I were just kind of offline chatting about, is that I think this will be a good test, if you will, for, based on the feedback we get from people and the status that they say that everything's in. If we're able to figure out where they fit in the process that we've got drafted up,
your
then
structure.
we're good. If it doesn't fit, then we have to figure out what, we got to kind of have a further discussion there.
You might need to allow them to have multiple categories, like ready for quality assurance testing versus, and also sent to court. So it's been sent to the court and it's being tested.
So then perhaps what we could do is we could have, instead of drop downs, we could have checkboxes with the kind of stages of the development. Something like, look, Jody and I will play around with that. Caroline, you're muted. You're still muted?
You're still muted, Caroline.
Still, yeah. No, she
Try
can't.
pressing
Oh,
the
there.
space. Okay.
I think I was thinking, I think this idea of checkboxes and you have more than one, because I get really confused, when you have labels and tags and milestones, you're sort of thinking what category of metadata.
Well, and I'm just wondering too, since we haven't really, I don't know how well we've done with the official statuses and things. So are we going to confuse people? Are they going to know what each of those mean, or on a micro level, not a macro? I think.
Oh yeah. I think you need a key.
We can add a description to each
Right.
question if we're using
because the other thing is, it's not like people are working on 4 forms and they have to figure out which each form goes into. They can spend some time figuring out which of these labels follows, and you have a description for it.
Do you think it's too much to just ask them to tell us rather than make them check a box? Are we just going to get too many varied responses? Or
no, I think if they're telling us, then we're going to have to be putting that in somewhere. I'd rather have them complete the form by Wednesday, say, and then if we have any questions, we can then go to them. Or if they have any questions while completing the form, they can reach out to us and say.
Yeah.
That's probably better. Yeah. I'm just thinking more in regards to like the check boxes, you know.
I
We
think
don't-
We're meeting
checkboxes
tomorrow,
are
Jody.
good.
We're meeting tomorrow at 9. So why don't we make that the first thing that we talk about?
Yeah.
And we don't have to overthink it. If we spend more than 5 minutes on this, I think we've spent too
Yeah.
much.
I think this is good. I think we're at a good point. I think we've got the main questions. Jody and I will sort out that last.
Just make sure
little bit
there's a
now.
narrative, an open narrative, which is a message from you to the next person.
Yes.
Okay, wait,
Yeah.
let me just make that a point there. That's important. Ensure open narrative.
There might be something, it might be nice also to capture the SMEs you consulted with,
Right.
Ooh.
Okay.
whether or not they are expecting future consultation. The last thing we want to do is consult with an SME, put their thing up and not tell them, thank you, and here it is.
And in what regard, so that if we want to reach out about a specific issue, we can reach out to the right SME, or is that not needed?
Yes, I think
I mean,
that's,
you all
has
know
to
Kate's
be
gonna
forward.
be the. I talked with Kate Barry.
I talked with Kate. I talked with Kate. I talked with Kate.
Okay, so Michelle, you're saying like more specific, like what did you speak to the SME? I wonder if that would be included in the GitHub.
And then you
You
know
say,
what else?
what
That brings
SMEs
up a
did you
good
consult with
point.
on what issues?
And
What
that
is
brings up a good point too. Like maybe if they got any specific help from someone like Quentin or Michelle or, you know, Caroline or any of you guys, that also is kind of helpful, because then it's like we know that, okay, they have some, you know, kind of knowledge about this form as well.
Yeah, they
I
might
think-
remember something.
The other thing, going back to the SMEs, is if they've got email addresses. So for example, we've got some specific SMEs. It would be helpful if we know the, you know, the name of the SME and the email address for that SME, because
Yeah,
there were
contact
several
information.
SMEs
Yeah.
that were not on are not on Slack,
Right,
or part of the
100%.
project.
Yeah.
And that is the joy of doing it. That is why we wanted to do it this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question we'll have a question for what SMEs did you consult with on what issues, and are they expecting further follow-up, and then also provide email addresses or contact details for that SME, for those SMEs. Okay, so Jody and I will have that finished. We'll drop that in the Slack tomorrow by 10:30. You guys can sign off on it, and we will then drop it in the assembly line channel. Prior to that, though, I think today I'm going to already start with those two first forms, the offboarding form and the time form. So it's not like 3 forms in one go. We can try and, you know, pace it out a little bit. Okay, is there anything else that anybody wants to mention on transition? I know this week, Jody.
So I was just wondering kind of what, I know we started to talk about it, and I know I've missed a few of the meetings, but have we discussed when we're going to sort of switch into, have we sort of decided when we're going to switch into the new cadence rather than doing the daily stand-ups every day? And have we decided like what cadence is, like what the cadence is going to be? Like, are we going to do one weekly meeting that kind of encompasses everything with management and just, you know, progress, or have we kind of figured that out? Because I think that's something we kind of need to nail down here in the next couple of days.
That's this discussion. I think that there are going to be 2 to 3 meetings. That's a necessity of the class structure that students will be contributing on. So there are 2 potential groups of students who would have meetings, and then potentially you would have a 3rd group for people who are not students. A 3rd meeting for people who are not students. Now, it does not preclude people from meeting at the other meetings, but students have scheduled times that they can be available.
And would they be prioritized in those meetings as well? Like, just,
yeah, they would be prioritized in those meetings.
Okay.
So that's that, and that would start that cadence would start next week for those students who are in classes. The thing that I think also needs to inform this is another question to talk about, which are, what is the status of our volunteers who are not Suffolk students? Because those are people I do not see almost ever. And I know Maeve has been dealing with them
Yeah.
a lot, and I don't want Maeve to go away and then to be like, no one's talking to me, what's going on? So I would like to have an accounting of who those people are, and sort of what their interactions have been. And then we can try to keep them, working on the same sort of stuff, or, sort of
and
acclimate them to the new cadence for everything else.
Kind of to that point, David, I think, like, for me personally, I don't necessarily need to like disappear from this project after Friday, right? So it would be cool if there would be it'd be cool if there'd be a meeting or some kind of a check-in that I could attend, even if it's just like a half an hour once a week. That would be great to just do kind of an overarching like check-in, and then is there any need? Like, is there anything that I could be helping with or work on? Like, but I don't want to have to go to a meeting every day, obviously, anymore, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there will be one, so the 2 to 3, the way I envision it is the 2 are the classes. It's possible those could be consumed together, so they might just be one. And then the remainder is a sort of all hands, anyone involved meeting.
Okay.
That one, I suspect, given the fact that, now this is something that we could change basically if we got different feedback. Quentin and I were talking about making that one a Friday meeting at our normal stand-up time, then followed by an optional casual Friday. If
Mandatory fun.
So a 12:30 stand-up for the whole group that runs till 1 for people to check in if they can, followed by, if you want to hang out, you can. And that would be open to everyone. And then there would be 2 meetings during the week, which would be blocked off time with students, and which I would hope that actually we could get a management meeting attached to one of those with this, this group, as much as it wants to continue to constitute itself.
I'm kind of envisaging like how
Which mean another day maybe? Oh.
prior to us converting to a more stand-up-y form, we were almost having a management meeting every day. That was kind of what the form was taking before students jumped on.
You mean sort of like a free-for-all?
That's what it was. Yeah. So if you're looking back at our like daily stand-ups, they were kind of running 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that could be something that could be the Friday meeting. The only thing is then it cuts into the
Networking.
casual part, right? No one wants to hang around for a management meeting to get through to the other end.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a way you could try to do something earlier, and then you could just cut things off at a certain time.
What were the times of the meetings for the students in the week? What were those?
I still have to settle one of them, but one of them would be Tuesday from 4 to 6.
So you were thinking that could be a bit of a management?
Love you.
Yeah, some of that time, if people could make any of that, make that time. The thing is, I want to figure out what the other time for students is, and then I want to put it out to the group to see which one would make sense for people.
Okay, and I think that also the thing to bear in mind is, I know with the students, it's obviously you have to kind of have that scheduled and stuff. But for the all hands, we can play it by ear and see how it goes. This is an iterative process, so if it's not working out, we're not married to that. I mean, we can see it's malleable. We can try and change it. But I agree with Jody that I would like a once a week meeting. And it's probably something that we could also encourage other team members to attend when it's not a daily meeting.
Yeah. My hope was that we could have a short meeting that would allow everyone to get some face time, and then sometime afterward to allow for team cohesion.
It sounds like that's really different from the administrative meeting, though.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm seeing.
Probably
as
should
the
be a
management
different day.
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, the management meeting I'm seeing as a different meeting, and I think that management meeting, ideally, I would like to tack it on to maybe one of the student meetings, so that there could be, so they could get exposure to the overall management, and they might not actually need to be there for all of them or all of it, but it would be nice to time box it together. Yeah. So for example, if we have the Tuesday 4 to 6, it might be nice to either take the first half of that or the second half of that, depending on what's easier for people's schedules, and say, hey, can you swing by then and we'll talk about management stuff. And then we either will or won't involve students as needed, but that would be our management time. I'm just, from a scheduling standpoint, Quentin and I have to balance our schedules as well, and they become more rigid than they are right now.
And I think it'll be interesting if we can establish, I think it'd be good for us to establish like some concrete goals and objectives for each of those meetings, because what I'm thinking is, and it might not, the right place might not be the management meeting, but if there was either one of the meetings or just a task that happens among some people during the week that lead up to that Friday meeting, that's kind of the all hands open free for all, it'd be good to have some kind of an organized list, or just some, you know, even if it's like 3 bullet points of, you know, hey, this is something that we could use somebody's help on, or this is something that we need, you know, a person with these kind of skills to do, something like that that's ready for that Friday meeting that could, you know, be so that when people come to that Friday meeting.
This is where I really need an accounting of the folks who are not Suffolk students, because for the Suffolk students, that's all going to take care of itself as a consequence of their instruction. So we've got about 8 students who will either be in the lab or a clinical fellow, which will be working on this. 3 of them will be carryovers from existing students. The remainder, I think, will all be new. Maybe one of them might be, another one might be carryover. So we'll have about 4, so about half and half. And they're going to be tasked primarily with working on forms. So I think they'll bring a bunch of the forms that are almost there over the finish line, maybe as a good introductory exercise to get them introduced to things. And then they'll start working on either maintenance of larger things like 209A or creation of their own things. And so I think we're gonna, you know, we've talked about how the throughput's gonna have to like slow down because we'll have that number of bodies, but they'll be 1/5 of what the body has meant over the summer. Right. So that's just gonna slow down. It's just gonna be working on forms. The main management decisions will be about what forms to prioritize next, who to assign to what forms. As far as students are concerned, Quentin and I are going to have to take the lead on all of that. So really, there's this open question about what is the capacity of the external volunteers, and how do we want to manage that? And if it's a lot, then it's one sort of set of answers. If it's not that much, then it's another set of answers.
It sounds like it's almost like we can kind of categorize people in the same way that we have been all summer. Whereas, like, if you've got a short duration with limited, you know, few hours here and there, you're probably going to be best suited for something like testing. You're just going to help out with testing whenever you can. And maybe that's something that most of us just kind of fall into. I guess I was thinking just more like, not so much the day-to-day workflow, like you said, with the class, but things like, you know, oh, hey, it'd be like we're talking about today, like, oh, it'd be great to have this feedback form, like who can work on that? And that might be something that you would want a student to do, right? To get that experience. But if not, that's something you could like throw up to one of the volunteers. I don't know. It's probably, we're not going to be able to probably like.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the rest of that volunteer workforce looks like.
And we're going to have some
interests.
Oh, Quentin, so you're breaking up a little bit there.
Yeah,
sorry,
you're breaking up a lot there.
Is it any better now?
Yep.
Better.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. So obviously we have GBLS and MLRI. You're playing really big roles. Technically, you know, it's a partnership that we've just formalized from being volunteers to maybe VLP could be another partner like that, for example. And maybe, I know Melina's working on those divorce forms. So those might demand a different kind of check-in. I mean, it may not require formal meetings to accomplish that kind of cooperation because they're people who we know have a commitment for a long defined amount of time and can ask questions as needed, but also can work somewhat independently.
Yeah, yes, I strongly concur. I think that what will probably happen, and we mentioned this last time, was that people are going to get siloed, whether we like it or not, just because of the management structure and the way that people's time's available. That'll be what happens. So it may be that we say, hey, group over here, you take one on this, group over here, you take one over that. And what we're doing is we're just touching base once a week to make sure we're all on the same page and things will interact and work together.
I think that those weekly touch and base are important. And having FaceTime. I think that's important when you have an entirely remote workforce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an accounting of the people that I'm regularly in contact with, and kind of then the people that are on the peripheries that we maybe just need to check in with. And I think that key to that, Jody, is actually a meeting with Tyler so that we can have a proper handover with him. Because he's also been in charge of the onboarding of the last few weeks. So I don't know if you could just quickly drop him a message and ask him when his availability is, just for an hour.
I'll get with him.
With me, and I can meet with him as well, because I'm doing, so what I was saying earlier is that this week I'm doing documentation for pre-processing and for, that's more of like a refresh of the documentation. That documentation was already pretty robust. Kind of updating it with certain things that we've learned over the last month, 2 months. And the other one that I'm doing is the testing documentation, which is a little bit more, needs a lot more work. So that's kind of my two big tasks this week, and then also just updating videos on those, so that we make sure that as little kind of, you can hand someone a lot of, content to go through, as opposed to us having individual calls with them to guide them through each of those things. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So Jody, if we can also maybe meet with Tyler and kind of get that onboarding. I know there's already an onboarding
why don't you
document.
put that for me? Assign that to me. I'll get with Tyler this week. Make sure that we've updated the documentation.
Because you do have you created documentation for that.
Yeah,
correct?
I already have it. Yeah.
I'd like to be in on a little bit of the testing documentation.
Okay.
So to review, or to, like, I don't know, something to understand where that's at, because I've lost a little touch with it over time.
Okay, perfect. No, I'm basically going to get I have a bare bones of it, but it was outdated. Just as the testing process evolved, it needed to be updated. So why don't I do a first pass at it and then give it to you maybe by Wednesday or Thursday to have a look at?
Sure.
And then Mia and Vinny are doing the first review of that, installing a package on the test server, which Aubrey did a fantastic job on. Really, she did a really, really good job creating that. So hopefully they won't have that many comments, but we'll see. And then, so we've got that documentation. Then the development documentation is more, I think what I was thinking of, Jody, is I think that's going to be primarily like the style guide and the coding guide, as opposed to, like, I feel like we have basically 4 points on the checklist there. We've kind of got sub checklists, but it's not going to be as content heavy as pre-processing and testing.
Yeah. And Caroline, I was going to offer to you, if you want, next week I'll be home again. And so my days will be a lot more free because I just have class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you and I want to spend some more time together next week, we can schedule that now and we can work on that more.
Muted.
You're on mute, but it looks like you said okay.
Some more questions have come up in my mind as we've been talking, so let me know when I can slip those in.
Yeah, Jody, why don't we do a Slack instead of taking time now for scheduling?
Perfect.
I've got a meeting I've got to go to at 2:00, so I just.
Perfect.
Okay, so is there anything, one thing that I was just looking at quickly, Carolyn and I were meant to work on the impoundment question in terms of language, and then when I look at the basic questions, it looks completely different. Quentin, I was wondering if you changed anything there. Yeah, you did.
Sorry, on the
basic questions.
Interpreter. It's not in the,
I don't think so.
Sorry,
it's
interpreter.
not, I'm not sure, Maeve, it is based. I mean, so what I'm not sure is, Quentin, is the master on GitHub what's actually installed? Because there was some other question I thought they don't seem to
match.
We can look at the
It might not
commits
be.
and see who made the commits. So,
I did.
Okay.
And first of all, we have to find it. I mean, that's the thing. So Maeve and I will track down the interpreter thing.
You're saying it's not installed, though. That's different from saying who made the change. You're saying maybe it was made, but it's not visible on the dev server.
Well, so what I'm saying is we saw it somewhere and we thought it was basic questions. So we need to double check that. I know how to check it. I maybe we can figure out who did it. But but my question is, it seemed to me if that actually is different somewhere, I'm not 100% sure that the master on GitHub is matching what's installed on the servers. So because there was some, I don't remember what the question was, but there was something else that made me think they're not matching.
Let me
So
take a look at that. I'll make sure that the version is the same as the latest version.
You remember
Because
what
basically the one that we were looking
format
at
was that
on
you
a
were
lot of
looking at?
interviews is like
you guys
there's
are
a thing
both
that-
talking at the same time.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The one that we were looking at on the and that was coming in through in a lot of questions was people saying the interpreter question was like ... then ask, right? And then when I looked at basic questions, the question was much better. Didn't have any of that. So I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's
what happened.
completely rewritten. I mean, the same sentiment. There is one idea that's not in that, but it because it's also about being understood, not just understanding, but being understood.
So that's something that Carol and I will look at and try and track down what the changes
Yeah.
were. And Quentin, are you just going to go have a look at see what?
Yeah,
The versions look the same. Did you check in the cover page.yaml as well? Because that,
No.
at some point we made kind of a nod to separating out more of the things, and that's really the only place that could otherwise be.
I did not look in
It's
cover.
a separate
No,
file
neither.
that it could be in.
Okay. Maybe that's there. Yeah.
I can look now while we're on the call, and it won't hold up people to do it.
Okay, so yeah, I just mentioned that because I thought Caroline, you were jumping off in 20 minutes. Is in terms of transitioning, is there anything else that anybody wants to mention right now, or will we just keep stuff in documentation and kind of, chat via Slack?
Teaching Tuesdays, just want to have that in our minds for volunteers that are not students. Is there going to be some kind of mentoring or teaching structure?
It's a really good question.
Okay.
I was thinking about that this week too. That's good.
I mean, another one of our options. I mean, so a lot of what the student time will probably look like, it will be a mix of dealing with problems and teaching Tuesday as they come up. So it might be worth trying to establish a time that would work for, that could be an open meeting that worked on that same
Okay.
thought.
We don't get in trouble for
Another thing,
spending student time on volunteers.
We can't have, unfortunately, we can't have, it's effectively a class meeting, the meetings with the students. And so that needs to be devoted to, I mean, they're students who are paying tens of thousands of dollars. So so I'm saying, yeah, different
for just volunteers, right?
Yeah, so a different time. We could have a different meeting.
and maybe
Quentin and I will have to talk about whether or not we can work that into our schedule and how that would work.
I wonder if it'd be interesting to see David and Quentin like kind of get through the first week or two of classes, and then I think the needs will be more apparent because you might even, sorry.
Oh, no, continue.
Because then what I'm thinking even is there might be like, maybe there's a handful of students that really are having a trouble with one certain thing. And then you bring Michelle or someone else in as like a guest speaker or like to do a tutorial or something. I don't even know if that's possible, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like since everything is sort of going to be changing, then wait and see how it goes. And I think it'll be more clear to you. I think you guys will be able to answer those questions a lot better in a couple weeks than you can right now.
I think that's right. And I think it's really dependent upon what the workforce looks like. That's the real question. If it's all students, then it's all going to easily be handled as part of the class structure. If there are more people, then there's that. That being said, I think we want to maintain our commitment to working in the open. So to the extent that we're doing things, we might often record parts of our classes and make those available. We also, our course materials, we will all be making available. And so that documentation will continue to be open. It's just a question of sort of one-on-one time and scheduling.
Yeah.
I mean, we could keep them going as an open format too. So, I mean, for a while I was doing these at GBLS, and it was Caroline, Matt Newstead, and like one or two other people who just had their questions of the week, which was actually a pretty good format. It was just harder. It became harder to keep it scheduled
GBLS one actually really helped me a lot. There's some of them were posted on YouTube. There was a playlist up there, and they had a couple of questions. Like when I was just trying to figure stuff out, I would like go on YouTube, and that one came up a lot. That playlist.
Oh, good.
So that's also another resource just to be aware of.
Yeah. So that's a capacity issue. So we'll see. Quentin and I can have a chat. If we could.
I mean, it's interesting
find
because
time.
there do seem to be probably every week you get another 2 to 4 volunteer. I mean, you know better, you guys, but it seems like we're still getting a steady stream of people who are interested in signing up. And part of it is in law schools across the country, but there's a kind of a whole, I don't know can't remember what the word is, but you know, like a whole group of A to J author law students out there in different law schools. And I think that's partly because you've got different mentors at these different law schools, but there still seem to be a lot of people out there doing it. And it would be nice to get those people doing Dockassemble as well, because I think they'd like it, you know, if they're interested in it. But I do think it is trying to identify a project manager for your outside people is just key. And
yeah, well, I think we need to figure out who those people are and what they look like and what their needs are.
Yeah.
And I think Jody's right that we'll have a better feel for that very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think also with the offboarding,
Mm-hmm.
who
are joining, you know, before we've got a couple weeks are up, do we have a plan for those people who are?
That's what the thing. The meeting with Tyler is going to be. Jody and Tyler are going to meet about kind of what the state is. There is an onboarding documentation. That might need to get updated, but then basically somebody will need to be tasked. We need to have somebody taking ownership of what happens when new people are entering the channel. Who will be the point person on that?
Yeah, like we just had another one pop in. I saw the other day, right, Quentin? And I think Quentin responded to him.
Oh yeah, Donato. Derek Donato.
Yeah, that was Derek. He was in the meeting. I think you might have overlapped with him, Jody, or he might have left just before you.
So I'll try to hammer that out with Tyler, but yeah, I think just, you know, because I think there is a lot of interest, and I think we want to maximize, you know, when somebody is interested, we want to grab them right away and get them locked in and get them working on something, and we don't want to waste that.
Right.
Because I think just in general, you know, Maeve's story is such a success story that, you know, she volunteered her time on this project and she got all this great experience, and now she was able to get a new job based on that experience. And you know, that I think that she's not the only person in the world that's interested in something like that. So, and especially with her being in South Africa and not even being in the United States, or let alone Massachusetts, you know, it's just such a great advertisement.
Again, it all comes down to what the population looks like, and then we can figure out what resources we have. So we just need to get a hold of what things look like.
Okay,
so
I'll do an accounting of the
key,
current.
I'm okay with keeping like a Teaching Tuesday office hours. I mean, that's very little work to maintain it in that structure for the next few weeks.
On
as a
Tuesdays,
transition.
you want to just keep the same schedule?
Keep the same time, because there are people who know that time. From outside of the project mostly, but I feel like that has value. Just to institutionalize the way we're doing Dockassemble development and get more people to
also
collaborate.
It's really easy to remember.
Teaching Tuesday.
Alliteration helps.
Like it's really easy to remember.
Teaching
like,
Tuesday.
Like, it's
Teaching
Tuesday,
Tuesday
right?
at 1,
PM.
basically.
Teaching Tuesday at 1. And the thing is, as I said, you know, my new firm are working on Dockassemble, and it's going to be interesting to see, like, you know, they've kind of just started working with Jonathan to try and figure out how to do something with the firm. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those legal engineers are kind of interested in learning more and kind of get more people. And also, I think Max is going to join from Friday. So there's, as Jody said, there's definitely people like me who are interested in learning this. You know, maybe don't have the full time to commit to an LLM or, you know, something like that. But this was the best hands-on way to learn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an accounting of the team members that are currently actively working on stuff. Give that to David, and we'll just put that in the admin channel. and then Jody will meet with Tyler and deal with how to deal with new team members. And then I think that's as far as we can take it. I mean, try aim for the middle of that.
I think that's the key. This week, it's about just capturing everything that people know and putting in a place that we can access.
Okay.
And because
those of us who are not going on to our next new cool exciting jobs.
And I think because of like the nature of this week and sort of all that's writing on it, it might make sense for us to do a couple more touch points, like maybe Wednesday and then even Thursday, as like with this core team here, just to kind of check in and see where we're at.
We're gonna hang on meetings a little longer if we need to.
Yeah.
On the stand-ups.
Okay.
So who's gonna get people started on the documentation and say, hey, everybody, we're switching to documentation?
So the plan is tomorrow
today
at
or
10, whatever,
maybe
you'll
tonight?
have a form.
So yeah, so by tomorrow 10:30 we will have a form. I'll put in the bare bones that the easy stuff, Jody, and then just the last 2 bits about where the form is in the process. We'll just talk about that. So latest 10:30, but maybe hopefully 10. We'll have something in the channel for that, just for everyone to review. So if you just keep your eyes out in the admin channel for 10 to 10:30, and then we'll post that in the channel, the admin, the assembly line channel straight after.
And then we'll talk about it at the daily stand-up.
Yeah.
We'll continue to talk about it at the daily stand-up, and we'll just try to get everyone.
And then Maeve, to your point, you're gonna have that list of people so
Yeah.
we can track like who's responded and Cool.
Okay.
I'm gonna hop off, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye, Jody. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then, so we're saying that Teaching Tuesday will continue Tuesday at 1. When does
And we can reevaluate in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have made it 2 p.m. instead of 1. I don't know.
When does that?
Do you want to change it to 2? Remember, you have a class on Tuesday, don't you? Or do you?
No, it's on Mondays.
When does the time zone? When does the daylight savings happen?
November.
Yeah, I can read Caroline's lips because Caroline can do it. Okay, so it's November.
Well, Quentin, you're probably looking at the calendar, right?
Well, I just know it's after Halloween. So I think it must be. I don't think it's November 1st this year.
Oh, I've never. I thought it was like last
That's
week.
a Sunday. So maybe it is November 1st.
And does it go? What happens? Do your clocks go?
We get an extra hour. We get to sleep in an hour.
Oh yeah, Caroline. So all the way till 3 a.m. for you. So, so for me, so does that mean I'm going to be 7 hours, not 6 hours, right?
Does your
'cause we
time
don't
not
change
change at
time.
all?
We don't change, no.
Oh, right. So we're going to be. What is 7 for us is going to be 6.
I'll figure it out. I just wanted to ask.
So it's
going
going to be
happen.
7 hours for you.
Okay, got it. Okay, so then I think Michelle, are you writing here? About
I wrote an additional thing under docket numbers, which is customizable docket number
So this is
values
specifically for Kate.
maximum characters. No, this is a coding thing. I can talk about it with Quentin offline if we want.
Um,
Oh, okay. You know what's interesting is some other countries that observe daylight savings time, their transition is different. So I know like Central European time, for example, they are like a few weeks off from the United States for when they changed to daylight savings time.
Yeah, UK time is like 1 week in the fall and 2 weeks in the spring or something like that.
Oh, guys, it's gonna be so confusing.
But I use this thing
3
called the
clocks.
time and date meeting planner. It's really useful.
Okay.
I mean, I just Googled it and I found it. It's a website called timeanddate.com.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I have that.
I use that all the time.
all the time.
Yeah,
Oh, I have Savvy Time. That helps me with my. But
Here
it
we
was
go.
easy when it was 6.
Daylight saving time. There we go.
Okay, so so the thing that we had for Kate was the multiple docket numbers. The practical question was how, but now I think Michelle, you've just. Okay, wait.
So what our proposal was that whatever the size of the text field, people figure out what that maximum number needs to be. And they have a text area where they can put in their docket numbers in whatever way they choose. And we have a maximum number and we say, just put in as many as you can. And then when they have done that, they can't put in any more docket numbers.
And they have a little, little reassurance text that says, the only thing, Michelle, is that some PDFs have more room and some PDFs have less
So
room.
that's the coding part that I was going to talk to Quentin
Oh,
about.
sorry. I didn't
About
realize I thought you
how to
finished.
customize the maximum value, how to write a docket number question that's standardized, but that customizes the maximum value of characters. So
Oh, well,
those are the two parts of that question.
I mean, most
So I think
forms,
we can
there's
make
only
it-
ever a possibility of having one docket number too. So that's something to remember as well. Although that may not be true for a lot of family law forms.
Yeah.
It's not
Right, yeah,
true.
this is,
I guess that's the
I feel like the
distinction.
exception is family law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
So this
for
might be a
unmarried
question-
parents, you have as many docket numbers as you have kids.
So this might be a question about abstraction and how we want to make those abstractions available. But they're, or otherwise people are just going to be writing their own docket number questions, which can be the choice. Like that can be a choice.
But
So
sorry, I just wanted to quickly
Can
go
we
back.
back up to the
Yeah.
first question?
So practical
So
questions.
what's the
again, how-
reassuring text?
That's Caroline's game. I'm not.
Well, I guess
I'm not
actually it was yours. It was your text yesterday.
my idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
your
it's
idea,
my
but it was
idea. I'm not gonna
essentially say,
word
put
it.
in as many as you can. The judge will ask you for the rest when you go to court.
I don't
You-
know.
You were on
I
that.
wouldn't be reassuring about it. The clerk's office gets
yeah.
very irritable about it.
Yeah. So, well, because what we were trying to, it's this whole issue about, do you want to do an addendum just for docket number? So what?
Well, I mean, what it's probably the perfect practice is if there's 3 docket numbers, you have 3 copies, one each with 1 docket number.
Okay.
Oh,
And
Okay.
then the realistic practice is stacking all the docket numbers onto one form. And when you submit on paper, you still have to give 3 copies. Electronically, that seems stupid.
well, wait, I mean, actually it's easier for us to
Yeah, that
make
might
3
be-
copies of the form. I mean,
Yeah,
then we can
I mean,
make it,
that's
there's no
flexible.
limit to how many.
With the change in the docket number, just on
Yeah.
each form. Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
I
if
think
that's
that
a
would be the
better
court's like
practice-
ideal practice anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what we should do. I'm really
That's
glad
what we
talked
should
about
do.
it.
Also,
then
I mean,
especially
it's going to
since
be
they're,
clunky for people who have 10 docket numbers, but
yeah, and their
at least
workflow
it'll
is they
always
print,
work.
their workflow is they print stuff out. So they already want that copy in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and when you file on paper, they want you giving 3 copies.
Right.
And that's exactly what we should do.
And I usually, like I said, I'll like stack them and I'll usually put like a little check mark next to, on copy 1, the first one's getting a check mark, and then the check mark on the next one, but I don't think the computer can.
No, we don't need to
What?
worry about
Okay.
that.
Okay,
She means
so-
she writes a list of all of them.
So
on
she
all-
then
knows
just
that
says
she's
which one
submitted
is-
them all.
1 through
That's
3
it.
or whatever it is. So then what we're going to say is we're going to actually strive for the perfect practice, which is you have, hypothetically speaking, 3 docket numbers. So when you have more than 1 docket number, you will create a copy with each separate docket number in it. How
Basically
complicated?
unique. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We
How
can
complicated
probably
is-
put in some boilerplate code that counts the number of docket numbers and generates the number of forms, unless there's some very customized situation where people will have to do their own thing. But it can at least be an example when we like do the PDF concatenation. That's my thought anyway.
We should.
There might be a different way.
Are you thinking about so just on the interface for the prompt for the docket numbers? Every docket number will get an individual prompt. Is that your thoughts?
That it could be a list collect, especially since list
Yeah.
collect can be disabled if
this
there
would be a good-
are.
I think
Yeah.
that
List
makes
collects
sense.
can be disabled if you want them to, which we can do based on Python code that checks on the number of docket sheets, which could be programmatically the code.
The only thing
could
is,
say
yeah, you
there's
want them
one
to.
docket sheet.
and
I'm
so you
gonna
have
hop
them
off, you
define the
guys.
number of
Bye,
dockets.
Caroline.
Bye, Caroline.
Thank you, Caroline. Say that
You're having
again,
them
David?
proactively define the number of dockets.
The
It's good.
if
question.
there's just one, then we can tell the list collect to not show the add another. It'll just show question.
But how do we
one.
know there's just one?
I haven't tested it out yet because if the coder knows there's just one.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
If
Yeah, we're
the
not talking about
user-
the end
if the
user.
user, if there could be more, then there can be the add another.
Right. Yes.
Right?
I concur with that. I was just I was trying to get to a UI point where I wanted to make sure that you weren't imputing the number of dockets by, say, a string that you were then splitting. So yeah, we're good. So you're talking about the, okay.
The form itself. So if the form itself can take more than one,
At
is
the
that
form
what
level.
we're saying,
So
right?
you're talking about changing the,
Oh, no, I mean, not if the form itself can, well, yeah, no, maybe you're saying the wrong, maybe we're
I think
saying
she's
different
talking
things
about a
by the
more
form.
generalizable, Michelle, you're talking about a generalizable thought about dealing with multiple docket numbers on more than just this form.
For writing the question in a way that says enable or disable or whatever the heck the property is, the specifier is on the list collect, which does, I believe, have the ability to disable list collect. So
Yep.
if the coder says there is only one, because this type of form only takes one, then I believe it will disable it. And then the user can, if there is more than one, then the user can add however many they want.
So this is basically about the proposal. You're talking about like a change to a docket question in general questions.
Yep, in basic questions.
Which then would either, so yeah, I think I was focusing on just this form, and I think other people were too. So if we were talking about changing basic questions so that you could collect one or multiple, I think now I understand what you're saying.
Is this the right question we're asking? Or are we looking at it backwards from, so the point is someone has to turn in multiple copies of the form. Do they know it because they have multiple docket numbers, or is there some like more meaningful trigger for the person like asking?
Unmarried children.
Multiple kids of unmarried parents.
Right. Yeah. So is that maybe a better way for us to handle? And then you say, oh, because you have multiple children, each child has a docket number, enter it. What's the docket number for child 1, child 2, child 3?
So I feel like we're getting into, I feel like we're getting into a little tension based upon the scope of the discussion. I think Michelle wants to talk about a basic question, generalizable way of handling docket numbers. And I think we're all talking about how to handle docket numbers in this particular form and case. And I think that actually the general question is maybe a little knottier and more complicated than right now. And actually the conversation we're having now makes me seem to think that like it might be a case-by-case sort of basis, and there might be triggers that are not just the number of docket numbers as Quinn.
Sure, I'm suggesting a format that we can discuss, and we don't have to discuss it now. I think it could work in other ways as well, but we don't have to discuss it now.
So I think what I've documented here is that there's two practices. There's the perfect practice and then there's reality. What we're going to try and do is the perfect practice, which is, and I've detailed what those are. The perfect practice obviously is 3 docket numbers, 3 different copies.
For this particular form.
For this particular form. When you have a 3 kids unmarried, would you have all 3 like in perfect practice? Would the court want all 3 to see that they're kind of related? So you want all 3 on each?
Oh, doesn't matter.
Okay, just wanted to know.
I don't think.
The form
Are
also
they going to be sequential, or is it easy to see that they're related?
Usually, but like I've had it where I filed 3 at once and somehow someone slipped in a pleading in between, so they end up non-sequential.
Okay.
Or you have 2 kids, you have a paternity case, and then a year later you have another kid.
Okay.
So this is this
so
question.
They're not always sequential.
Is this question something that can be dealt with in like a coding, the coding style guide meeting or something like that?
I'm not
there
sure.
There are 2 separate questions.
Yeah.
One that can be handled about this particular form, and then a generalization question that can be handled within a code style discussion. I believe. Sorry, I shouldn't say that as a blanket.
I think that's about right. There are 2 discussions here, and right now we're talking about this particular form.
What particular form? I thought we were talking about. What form are we talking about then?
It's the generic motion form, I think, right?
I just thought we were talking about all the family law forms.
Yeah.
It seems like it is the solution for all of them, ultimately. We just only thought of it first in the generic motion form.
Yeah. Because you end up, I mean,
there are other
strictly it could happen in a divorce. Sometimes you get like the parties cross-file divorces at the same time.
So it has to do something with the children specifically, though. Like, so we're not worrying about it for the 209A, and that's correct, right?
Yeah, you don't need this on the 209A.
It's when you're filing a motion in some kind of action related to the children specifically. That's the purpose of it.
Yeah,
and it's come up in another form that we're working on, not the GMF.
It will come up with any family law form that could be used in cases with unmarried cases with kids.
Do we want to set this aside and set aside some time for discussing this particular issue, or do we want to finish?
Right, I don't know what else
here.
There's probably more on the coding stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how to phrase the question a little bit. But it sounds like for now, the main thing is just to generate multiple documents, right? Which maybe it's enough direction.
We know the outcome, which is a benefit.
I would want to revisit it and decide if starting it by like how many docket numbers do you have is the right way to do it, but that doesn't have to be done for this one. It might be easier for someone to answer if we say, okay, you have to tell us 3 docket numbers, right? So they don't have to generate those on their own. But that could be done later. I think it doesn't have to be the first draft.
So we don't need to set aside, I mean, from the coding aspect, sure, I think there might be something that needs to be discussed in terms of practicality of how do we do that. But I'm not too sure that there's anything else that Kate can give input on, right?
I think we've gotten that needed input.
Okay, thank you, Kate. That pro.
Yeah, I think one person can code the behavior that we've just described. A generalized version is something that we need a meeting on if that's what people want to discuss. I think, or we wouldn't need a meeting, but it could be useful.
So at 2.2, when you say customizable docket number overflow suggestion, is that something separate then, Michelle?
That is this.
That is this.
That
okay,
is
so is that something that you want to meet? You want to schedule?
But we've obviated that with this particular use case. So it's a different
category of thing, like maybe it'll be in a couple months or something.
So this should this go on to like the to be discussed?
Sure.
I've got like a note that says to be discussed.
That sounds great. This is
like,
probably a basic questions question.
Yeah,
so
I think it's a basic questions question.
It's a basic question.
Okay. I'm just going to say recorded. Okay. Right. Conscious of everyone's time. Carolyn and I will have a look at the interpreter question. And then I've just taken, Caroline has a document where we've kind of put things that need to be discussed in terms of basic questions and style guide. We just put all of the things in there that have come up. I'm going to just share that again. Caroline's already shared it in the channel. I'm going to share
I think we should organize the various lists of basic questions to like just one folder somewhere or something that's a bit more visible and organized than, whatever it currently is, like Quentin's stuff and your stuff. And
yeah, so I've combined my stuff with Caroline's stuff. Perfect. So it's just maybe I think perhaps Quentin could add his notes to that. I'm not sure if it needs formatting, guys. The formatting, yeah.
Sure.
Can you drop a link in this meeting notes? And because I don't think I've opened it yet, which I should do.
So I'm just going to say basic questions. What is it? Basic questions to discuss. Basic questions. Okay. As I said, I will probably format this tonight, just to make it easier to look at. Okay.
Sorry, I was pulled away again.
No worries. Okay. So I recorded that. What's it called? Customizable document number overflow suggestion in that document. And I will edit this to make it look a little bit easier to comprehend. Okay, what else do we have to discuss? Oh, the next code style meeting.
I don't know. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. If it's not, whoever else has tighter schedules should probably discuss that.
So my priority this week is documentation of those two, the pre-processing and the testing. So I'm not going to commit to a code. I also don't think that I'm that valuable on that call yet. So I'd rather leave it to you guys to try and maybe if you feel necessary to schedule something like that.
It's also worth noting that this is not
The other style guide stuff, I think we're trying to capture existing practice. I think the coding style, a lot of it is, at least from the last call, was us trying to decide what the practice should be. So it's a different,
Right.
The time sensitivity is a different matter. One, we're trying to capture everything before people go away. The other one, we're trying to figure out what we want to do with people going forward. And so the latter, I think, can not be as urgent. So I think we also have to keep in mind that yes, the last week of something and then the first week of a new sort of something is probably not going to be the time to be working on some of these other, unless people have the availability. I'm just saying it's not the same priority.
It's not the priority, and the priority, as we kind of emphasized earlier on in this call, is actually just checking in on what people have captured in their issues, what we're going to be checking in on the form responses to see if we need. So I think that's probably where we need our people power. So maybe we can rain check on that, and then in 2 weeks we can check in on scheduling that.
That sounds good. It's a good call, David.
I just want to be very aware of the fact that, yeah, things are going to just change really drastically at the end of this week. And so for a lot of people, which is not to say things are going to, break. It's just that things will have to take a breath and then figure out what that new cadence and everything looks like.
Yeah, and then based on the composition of our group, there might be different things that need to go into a coding style guide too than there are now. That's a good point as well.
Okay, is there anything else that anybody feels that they need to raise? Okay.
Did we get addresses on folks and a core set of volunteers? I've been talking with the SJC folks about a thank you. I want to give people a physical letter or something. Do we have addresses for people?
We don't have physical addresses for people.
Maybe if we could identify those people we thought were really core contributors, and then we can follow up with them, even if that list is just a list of core contributors, so I can follow up with them later.
Because we've got everyone's email addresses.
Yeah.
So,
do we know what that number might be?
The number
ballpark.
1 second. So core contributors, I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 that I've dealt with pretty much core. On the kind of like outside of that, I'd say maybe double that, that I haven't been dealing strictly with.
Double that including those, or double that?
I'd say like 30, probably 30 core contributors that have been and gone in the project. Have touched the project at some point. And I think to that point, Sinead and Finola did some good work on the website, and I was wondering if we could maybe after the transition period, if I can play around with the kind of like web development side. I don't have much experience, but just try and play around with it and change the team page a little bit, because I'd like to have like an alumni.
Yeah, or make it like emeritus or something next to people's names. I think I did that for Matt.
Oh, okay.
What?
Hopefully we can get him back in.
Yeah, we'll get him back in. I think I had him down as
his time might change.
Emeritus or something.
Right. So just changing that layout. So like this is obviously like post, like take that on when I've kind of like moved away from the project management, taking on more project management tasks. But I would like to just kind of revise that page a little bit, and just because it would be nice to have people who have worked in this project, who have touched it and have been core contributors, to be recorded as such.
Yeah, I concur.
I agree.
If you need help with
I will.
HTML, CSS, etc., that's something I actually have more experience with than Python. So
okay, perfect. I would like to do this like kind of like as a side project in kind of like September sometime. So I'll bring it up again then, and it'll kind of also be in terms of like capturing team members that have done a lot of work. I mean, even within there's just been a really great core team. So I think would email addresses be fine for now, and then you can reach out to them and say, okay, what do
give me a list so I make sure they don't disappear. And
okay.
Then,
got it. Okie dokie. And David, are you going to send me your address or?
Yes, I suppose I will. You have to send me
Thank you.
yours.
Okay, perfect. Right. That's all for today. Is there anything else?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I'm really tired today, but
Aw.
if it wasn't for the fatigue, I'd be more effusive in my. Quentin and I just always, whenever we talk about the team, we're like just so in awe of all the work everyone is doing. So.
I have
Really
found
agree.
this to be a pretty impressive team compared to my
And
previous
and things are going to change, but that you know.
Nothing gold can stay.
Yeah, I guess that I feel like there's some metaphor or analogy here, but about like families and growing and whatnot. But yeah. So I just don't want anyone to get disillusioned or unhappy. Like it'd probably be a bit of a rough. And not that it'll be a rough transition, but transitions themselves are very hard, and it is going to be a very different cadence after we do the transition.
Yeah, we won't see each other every day.
Yeah,
It's
it's going to take a while for us to find our.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It's been like 5 months of seeing everybody like almost every day.
Yeah, I'll miss everyone. I've had a grand time.
Well, what's interesting is on this call, I don't know, we won't see each other every, well, Quentin and I will see each other every day, but the rest of, we'll still I suspect all the people on this call will still see each other at least once a week.
Once a week.
At least.
I can't wait
Not
to
the
hear
same
when
as every day.
roller derby.
No, it's not the same as every day. I'm
then we
trying
can
to
share.
make an accommodation to make people feel better.
It's like the end of
Yes,
camp.
you pointed out it's correct. It's not the same.
You don't know. It doesn't always need to be better. Sometimes it's okay. It'll be, a change, and that's what it'll be.
I said COVID depending. I'll be over in May for Jodie's graduation, so that'll be exciting. I don't know. In South Africa, they've lifted up a whole bunch of the bans. They're like all of a sudden they were like kind of like on death's doorbell, and then they were like, actually, as of Tuesday, we're fine. Everything can open up.
Okay, we'll see how that goes.
COVID hasn't changed.
So I was like, I'm still going to be on my own personal level, like code red, because this is like when it's just going to get really dangerous. Like, oh, geez, yeah. So hopefully, I mean, May. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, I think once a week for sure, and yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
okay.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll check in later this week. We'll figure out a time, or that's what Jody said. So
yeah.
All right.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.